Okay, let's get into it. Getting ready for the second. This already started off bad. This is the second run, or oh my gosh, this is the second run. This is the second podcast of Morning Coffee and Bible. Wow, that was bad. All right, I hope that's not an indicator of how this is gonna go, but we'll roll with it. Got video going. Got my coffee. Got outline ready to roll. Let's get the audio started and we'll see how she turns out. See how many takes it do. I don't know. Let's see if I can just get right into it. Yeah, it's probably best that I don't just see myself on there. That might make things go a little smoother. But we'll see. We shall see. Hope audio sounds good. I don't know if I think I already did audio tests and everything should be running good and everything like that. So let's try to run with it. Let's get the ball and let's get rolling. Let's get the ball and get running. All right. We got the countdown. The countdown is about ready to roll. Here we go. All right. 3, 2, 1. Wow, that was bad. Wow, that was bad. I did not have it ready at all. I did this last week, so we'll just see. We'll just have to roll with it. Oh, that don't want to be here myself. Okay. Delete. Okay. Here we go. All right. I need to have this up. So it's like immediately I'm going to have to pull this up because I want to be looking at it from this screen. All right. I hope y'all don't just hear me clearing my throat and stuff like that. Hope it's not vulgar. Okay, here we go. I'm just gonna have to bounce around. 3, 2. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's painful. It's painful. Okay. It's because I got to be able to just move quick like a cat. Just, bounce around, just jump around. Just get into it. Let's not waste air time. Let's not waste anyone's time. Okay. Try this again. All right. So I'm going to have to do that. All right. We'll see if we can roll with it. Got to be able to improv. Improvisation. All right. Delete. All right. Here we at least I got a countdown. The countdown will do it for me, so I can do that. I don't want to hear. I don't want to start off with that. How do you get that out of the way? Get that out of the way. All right, stop that. Delete. I'll get faster and faster at deleting things. I'm sure of that. All right, because I only have 2 screens. I need to have more than 2 screens. So, probably shouldn't be sharing all that. You don't want to see the man behind the curtain. You don't want to see everything. You don't want to see how the sausage is made. People don't like to see that. They like to see the finished sausage, the finished product. All right, here we go. Let me take a drink. One drink before we get rolling. All right. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. That's not pretty. Here we go. See if you have heard this story before. Nope. Let's try this again. Take 1,000,000. Okay. Let's try this again. See if this story sounds familiar to you. An asteroid the size of Texas is barreling through space and coming towards Earth. It will be entering our atmosphere in a matter of days, and we have no idea it is coming. Welcome, everyone. This is Morning Coffee and Bible with Brandon Fogel. I am so glad you're here. I hope you're having a wonderful morning, a wonderful day, and you're ready to get going. We are going to jump into it. I'm not going to dilly-dally as much. I'm going to try to remove the dilly-dallying so we can just try to remove the silliness. Let's get right into it. Let me continue with the story. Here we go. The U.S. government is aware of this asteroid, but the public has no clue that this is happening. A group of men have been assembled and have been given a mission that they can either refuse or accept. And this mission is to save the world. Now, out of this group of misfits, they are led by a man who is brash and unconventional. He goes against the grain in all aspects of his life. He's good at what he does and knows how to get the job, whatever job it is, done. His name is Harry Stamper, and he has a daughter named Grace. One of Harry's workers is a man named AJ, who, like Harry himself, is extremely confident and almost cocky at times. And this AJ has been under Harry's nose dating his daughter Grace for some time now. Harry and AJ, along with the rest of his crew, who are the most unlikely heroes you would ever find, are asked to embark upon a mission to launch into space to meet the asteroid on its way to Earth so that they can use their skill of drilling to drill into this flying mass of rock that is hurling through space at nearly the speed of light. As you probably have already guessed, Harry and all his men accept this mission and eventually find themselves upon this asteroid in the worst conditions imaginable. After hours of drilling...
Try again in a few seconds.
Okay, that was embarrassing. As you probably have already guessed, Harry and all his men accept this mission and eventually find themselves upon this asteroid in the worst conditions imaginable. After hours of drilling into the rock using Harry's own crafted equipment, they finally reach the depth that will be deep enough for their mission to be successful. All they have now to do is to lower the nuclear bomb down into the abyss of this asteroid, pack up and get back into the space shuttle and launch back to Earth, where they will be able to detonate the bomb while they are thousands of miles away in safety. However, as with most plans, this one in a single moment gets completely turned upside down. The remote detonator has malfunctioned, and the only way to ignite the bomb is to do so while still on the asteroid. After drawing straws of who will be the lucky man to give his life to save the world, it unexpectedly falls to AJ. As happenstance, he picks the shortest straw. Harry escorts AJ back down to the surface of the asteroid, and while on their way, being choked up, AJ asks Harry to tell Grace how much he loves her and misses her. While suddenly, as the door opens to step out, Harry grabs AJ, puts something in his vest, tears his oxygen, and throws him back into the elevator to go back up to the space shuttle. "You're going to tell Grace yourself," Harry says. "Your job is to take care of my little girl now." The billions of people on Earth have now been made aware of what is taking place, and they are bracing for the possibility of impact and what would inevitably lead to human annihilation. The space shuttle departs, leaving Harry all alone on the asteroid to finish the mission. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like Harry and his men will have been successful once again in getting a job done that seems impossible to complete. But the asteroid is not ready to be defeated just yet. As you can imagine, the atmosphere or lack thereof on this rock flying through space is very unpredictable. And Harry, in a split second, is knocked off his feet, and the detonator he is holding gets flung from his hand. The crew in the space shuttle starts to get worried because Harry should have by now detonated the bomb. There is a point at which it will be too late if the bomb is not detonated in time, that this will all have been just a useless exercise. One of the men in the ship is fearful that Harry will not be able to do what he must do, and he begins urging the pilot to turn around and go back. But Harry's closest friend, and AJ, know better. And they insist to giving Harry more time because they understand that he will finish the job. Back on the rock, Harry is climbing and crawling as shrapnel and debris are flying in all directions. Getting his footing and straining his hand out to reach the detonator that was knocked away previously, he is finally able to grasp it, and thanking one last time of Grace, and as her life growing up flashes before his eyes, he pushes the button. Back on the ship, AJ says to the man urging the pilot to go back, "Don't turn around. Harry will finish the job. Harry doesn't know how to fail." And the bomb ignites and a flash of light pierces through space as the asteroid splits apart and misses Earth with miles to spare. All right. Hope everyone's having an excellent morning or excellent whatever part of the day you find yourself in. We are rolling. This is Morning Coffee and Bible with your host, Brandon Fogel. So, sorry, let me take a drink. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I'm betting most of you can already guess what I just read from. It was a rendition created by me, but it was taken from the movie Armageddon. Armageddon was a movie probably about a little over 20 years ago. A feature actor was Bruce Willis. There was a number of famous people in it. Ben Affleck was in it, a number of other people. It was an excellent movie. And if you haven't seen it, I highly encourage it. It was awesome. And the lead singer of Aerosmith, which is Steve Tyler, I think that's his name. His daughter, I believe, plays the part as Grace, which is AJ's girlfriend who was eventually going to become his wife. But it's an awesome movie. And why did I start off the morning coffee and Bible with that? Well, I wanted to start it off because we are going to be talking about this morning a little snippet from that movie that I love, and what Ben Affleck, who plays AJ in that movie, he says, "Don't go back. Harry will get it done." And I'm not using the exact words. I don't know the exact words we said, but he says something like, "Harry doesn't know how to fail." That line, whenever always heard that line, whenever I watched that movie and heard that, it always brought amazing feelings to me. Like I got goosebumps, and made me always just like it was just a really cool high that you would get just listening to that, because it was an awesome part of the movie. And the only thing that could ever make it into my mind, like how I could capture what he's saying right there and actually apply it to the reality of my life, is there's no one like person on this earth right now that I could give I could look to and say, wow, that person, they cannot fail. They're not going to fail. They're not going to let me down. But as with many things, and what I would say, like if you listen to songs or anything like that, a lot of the songs that we listen to, we apply them to something greater. A lot of songs are written about love and the woman you love and all that kind of stuff. But when we boil it down, we can really apply those things to something we're seeking after more, and the only one who can actually fulfill that, which would be God. So I've taken that, and I've loved that little snippet, that little line that AJ says, and I apply that to God, because in reality, God is the only one who doesn't know how to fail. So that is what we are going to be focusing on this morning, is that God doesn't know how to fail. Now, we're going to unpack that in many different ways. We're going to look at different Bible verses or just parts of the Bible. We're not going to really go much line by line or anything like that, but we're just going to talk about different parts of the Bible and how that can be kind of pulled out, and we can get a better understanding of God and what that applies to our lives. If God doesn't know how to fail, and just even that little phrase, doesn't know how to, well, that am I playing, kind of loose with this, and am I just kind of taking a little bit too far? I mean, maybe, could be, possibly, but I would say that I think I have liberty to do this because God, we can take many things that are in this world and in this life and apply them to God. Ultimately, He's the one who created everything. He's the one who's put us in this reality that we experience. So we can tie everything back to Him in some form or fashion. Now, a lot of things in this world do get twisted and turned, so they mischaracterize God. But a lot of things we could truly put back on Him, And so I'm gonna take this movie from this snippet from a Hollywood movie, and I am going to run with it. So we're gonna talk about that. So let me pull up a few things. All right, so I hope everything is rolling the way it's supposed to. Let's put my notes over here. And we got the audio rolling. And I don't know how all this is all going to come out and sound. So hopefully everything sounds all right. I don't have a person checking me and say, hey, audio is good. Sound quality excellent. No, I don't have that. I am running. I am just shooting from the hip, You know how that goes. If you're anybody, you know how that goes. So let me pull up a few things. All right. Put things where they need to be. All right. So the things that we are going to talk about, we're going to focus on 4 different books of the Bible that I've pulled out, and I've selected them for various reasons. They kind of went with the theme I wanted to run with this morning. One was going to be Genesis. 2, and I'm going to list them all right. Yeah, give me that thumbs up. I'll take it. 1 is going to be Genesis. 2 is going to be Ruth. And now, let's see if you can find that book in your Bible. It's a very tiny book in the Old Testament. 3, we're going to look at Isaiah, and specifically chapter 53-ish. Not exactly 53. We're going to look a little bit before that as well. And then we are going to camp out as much as we can and as much as we can glean from the book of Revelation. We're going to look at Revelation and see some different things from there and how this all ties in and how this all applies to the reality that God cannot fail. He doesn't know how to fail. And that we can not be let down if we look to Him. If we include Him, if we are aware of Him in all of our daily lives, we won't be let down if we include God with us, because He's already there. It's just being aware of that presence that is already there with us. All right. Woo! Get all the jitters out. Woo! Get all those jitters out. So I don't know what you're doing right now. If you are doing housework, you're doing actual work, you're working out, you are sitting in front of a TV, sitting in front of a computer, you got this in the background as you're walking, whatever you're doing, I hope you got your coffee. I hope it. Yeah. Mine, if you're just listening to this, you can't see, but I have just black coffee this morning. But I got a little surprise later, a little surprise for me, and a visual surprise for anyone else out there that watches this visually, that I might just keep it a little secret, and I might forget about it at the end, so who knows. But I got a little prize at the end. So that's the tease. That's going to be a bad tease because I think you'll be let down. I'm gonna put that out there because I don't want to make it seem like it's going to be really good because it's not. But I hope you like it. All right. Without further ado, am I going to say that over and over? Without further ado. All right. So I don't know if you have your Bible handy. But we are going to start in the book of Genesis. Just because I want to start there because of saying this phrase, God, I'm taking that phrase from the movie, obviously. Harry Stamper, he doesn't know how to fail, which is just a heart-wrenching emotion driver of a saying to say, which is really cool. I just love it. I'm going to apply that to God, and where it says he doesn't know how to fail, God doesn't know how to fail. And I'm getting a text. I got to kind of swipe that away. All right. God doesn't know how to fail, and I want to unpack that. Now, when we say God doesn't know something, now this is obviously not a verse from the Bible. God doesn't know how to fail. But there's a lot of things in the Bible that indicate that God is faithful. He can't go back on his promises. When he makes a promise, when he makes an oath or anything like that, he can't undo it. It says in the Bible, there's certain things that it says he cannot do. It says in Titus, the book of Titus, God cannot lie. So you'd think God is able to do whatever he wants, But there are certain things within his nature he cannot go against. It's who he is. It's who he's always been, and he is unchangeable. It says in the Bible that God does not change. That's an awesome thing. If you really think about that, it says God says, "I change not." I forget exactly where it is in the Bible. It's in the Old Testament, one of the smaller books of the Bible, but he says, "I change not." And then also in the book of Hebrews, it says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He does not change. And Jesus Christ, being God in human form, he does not change. So, all right. So saying God does not know how to fail. Let's see in the book of Genesis. He does. Let me look at this a second. 1 second. All right, we're going to start in Genesis chapter 3. All right. 1 second. All right. Sorry. And I gotta learn. I'm gonna learn how to edit. I'm actually learning how to edit. So hopefully these dry points in the podcast and the video I will remove. But until we get to that day, they might just be there to stay for a little bit. All right. Now, when we say God does not know how to fail, I wanted to pull up Genesis chapter 3 specifically because it looks like if you just took Genesis at face value, the first 3 chapters, God makes this universe, this perfect world, and then he creates animals, he creates birds, reptiles, everything. He puts everything in the seas and in the skies and all that kind of stuff. He makes everything perfect. It's Eden on earth. And then he takes who is to be the image of him. It says made in the image of God. He takes and he creates man from the dust of the earth. And then he does that, and then he gives this, and then from Adam he makes Eve, pulled from Adam's rib, and creates and forms and fashions Eve. And then Adam and Eve, and primarily Adam, is given a test. They're given a test to whether they will obey or disobey God. And as we all know, well, I don't want to be presumptuous, the Bible describes that they failed. And if anyone's not familiar with what happened, Adam and Eve were given the option. God said, you can eat from any tree of the Garden of Eden, everything is before you. It is yours. Enjoy and have everlasting happiness. But then he says, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, do not eat, for in the day you eat it, you will surely die. Now, I wanted to go into this briefly is because God, it sounds like God gave them this option. They failed. So did God fail? Did God create a world with the possibility of sin entering? Was that a failure on his part? I would say no. I would say God absolutely knew what was going to happen. And God knowing all things, it's clear that he did. he gave them that option to whether they obeyed or disobeyed. It was not going to reflect on him. He was given the creatures he made a free will whether to choose or reject him. Now, if we go into, I kind of lean towards, apart from God holding them up and sustaining them by grace, they would fail if he did not give them a kind of like a hidden grace of just to not fail. They would have. It was like almost inevitable. That's my viewpoint. It's kind of like one of those things when we talk about, could Jesus have sinned in this world? Being God, could he have actually sinned? Like, it's like, in theory, yeah, I guess he could have sinned, but really, could he have sinned? I mean, it's like he was tempted in every way where he could sin, and he was given the option to, but being God, and that was not going to go against God's plan, or him being God in human flesh, he was not going to, I don't think, really. So I lean towards like he obviously couldn't have, but it's a really dicey kind of proposition because, well, yeah, I mean, I guess you could, if you took it to its logical extreme. If he was really tempted, he could have, but he couldn't have. I don't know. That's a tough one. That's where I think falls this same kind of situation for Adam and Eve. I view that they in reality, if God didn't uphold them and give them that grace to not sin, they would have sinned. They did sin, because he didn't give them that grace behind it. Now, that might go against something, whatever anybody else thinks. That's just my viewpoint. So, let me take a drink. Coffee. It is fuel. Fuel for the mind. So, well, we're just going to look at Genesis chapter 3. So God creates Adam and Eve. They're in this perfect paradise. Then the tempter comes, which is Satan, in the form of a serpent. And the woman is deceived and eats from the tree that they're not supposed to eat from. She gives to her husband, to Adam. And that was really Adam sinning was really the crux of the issue, I would say. It's so, I mean, just this topic in itself, like, is really tough because Adam sinning, him doing that, like, he was the one that was almost undergoing the test in the first place, the most important test, because God was the one who specifically instructed him, do not do it. Eve, from that, was given probably instructions from Adam, but Adam was the one who heard directly from the mouth of God, do not do this. And when he sinned, he was the one who willfully went against God's word. Eve, on the other hand, she being deceived, it's still sin, but it's almost a degree of sin was much more with Adam and him willfully disobeying God. Now, I wanted to just kind of look at this because when we think of could God, how can we say God doesn't know how to fail? And I don't want to just try to stretch this and try to just wrap it around and make it apply to everything I'm talking about, but I do want to kind of run with this. I want to, because it means a lot to me, and I don't know if you've ever even thought about this, but just thinking about that God can't fail, that he doesn't know how to fail. It's not in his vocabulary. When God says he's going to do something, he does it. Now, him saying, don't do this, and if you go ahead and do what I tell you not to do, consequences are going to occur. You're going to experience them. Is that his failure, that the creatures that he made did that? I would say no, because he just what that made occur, what that when they sinned, what that caused to unfold. It takes me forever to get out of a sentence. What that caused to unfold was, it was going to be the unfolding of redemptive history, so that it was going to demonstrate to God's creation that he's not only love and righteous and perfect and holy and all that, but also that he's gracious, that he's merciful. And that was something that none of the angels or other creatures that God's made would have ever experienced or understood if God had not allowed humankind to fall into sin. And then where he goes after, makes a plan to go back and redeem his fallen creation, redeem humanity, it was going to demonstrate that he is forgiving, that he is merciful. Because prior to that, the angels that were created perfect, and this is kind of why I said earlier, why I think there was almost a hidden grace given to, it would have required a hidden grace to it would have required a hidden grace to have been given to Adam and Eve for them to have not have sinned. Because we see out of the angels, I don't even know how many angels were created, but it says not all of them remained perfect. Not all of them remained on God's side, and a number of them fell into sin. A number of them sinned. So why did some angels sin and some other angels didn't? And that's for a lot of the hidden aspects that we do not know, the mystery of God, that why certain things happen. Why do some people choose to believe and others don't choose to believe? You know what I mean? It's there is kind of something that is behind the scenes. There is a mystery that we don't understand fully, that we don't have privy to, and that we're not given at this time. Maybe someday when we get to heaven we will understand, but a number of the angels fell, and I would just say they weren't given a hidden grace. They weren't given a grace to uphold them to not fall. That's the only thing I could say. That's from my little small finite mind, trying to take from the Bible and trying to understand it. But so let's look at that a little bit more. So God tells Adam and Eve, if you eat of this, you will surely die. They do that. God's plan, it looks like it did not come out the way that we would think would be perfect, because it looks like God failed. I would say God did not fail. He did not fail whatsoever, but he would have had he obviously has a prior knowledge of everything that happens. He plans everything that does happen, and humanity is, we make real choices, but God is the one that is behind all choices. He's the one who allows and directs and indirectly causes and all that kind of stuff. So he is in control of everything that happens. So when Adam and Eve fell into sin, they failed into sin. They did, and that's what they did. And it was clear that God was not in any way, it was not his fault at all whatsoever. He gave them the choice. They willingly made the choice to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and their eyes were open, and then they had sinned, and then that's where we are left today, fallen into a world of sin. So now, them eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it says their eyes were opened. So they could not reverse what they had done. There was no going back. All that could happen was God somehow making a way that they could be brought back into a right standing with him. And then that's what happens. All right. So I would just say God does not know how to fail. And even though he puts things in place that it looks like that he failed in a certain way, in reality he did not, because it's not his causing of his creatures to make wrong choices. all it did was it put into place an opportunity for him to demonstrate his grace, and which he did when he came was sending Christ into the world to come and rescue us from our sins, and so that we can be brought back into a right relationship with him. All right, so I feel like I've just got into it, and I just kind of just wheeling and dealing right now. All right, so I wanted to just jump into Genesis to kind of bring that up, and we're going to get a little bit further. And so humanity has fallen into sin, and God tells because they sinned, he curses the world, he curses man, he curses the woman, he curses the serpent, and but he also gives this promise that he is going to that the seed of the woman is going to crush that serpent's head, and that is the first gospel, which is the first good news of that God is going to be Savior. He is going to save. He's going to come and save his people. So, and that is in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Actually, let me just read that, just so that's a good one to kind of kick us off with. All right, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. And God speaking to the serpent, he says, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." Now that is Satan his head being crushed by the seed of the woman, which happens in the cross. Jesus Christ crushing the head of the serpent. That's when Satan does not have any more power. He has no power over us when that happens. He can try to tempt us and accuse us and all the rest. He has no power over us anymore because of the cross of Christ. All right, we're going to skip through to the book of Ruth. All right. I don't know if you've read through the book of Ruth. If you haven't, you really need to. It is a very short read, and it is an awesome book. I love it. Whenever I think of the book of Ruth, the word that I think of, I'll give you a second to try to guess. What word would I think of? And I guarantee you're not going to guess. I think of the word wholesome. That is the word that always comes to my mind when I think of the book of Ruth. And here I am again, not finding the books of the Bible. Man, I just need it in front of me, in front of a screen, it feels like, because it takes me forever to actually locate something. I think it's right after Joshua. Maybe before Judges. Let's see if I'm right. And I was wrong. It's probably right after Judges. I found it! Yay! 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 Wow, that was weird. All right, let's just sip. Let's do some sipping. All right, grab your coffee and just do some sipping. Warm up your coffee. You need to. That's what you need to be doing when I'm kind of drawing it out and just like taking forever to get to a point. Just grab your coffee and go warm it up. Whatever hot beverage you're drinking. All right, the book of Ruth. Finally there. And I only wanted to read a little snippet of it, but the book of Ruth, it is, I'm just going to give a very quick, you're thinking, what does he do that is ever quick? I don't know. But I'm going to do a quick summary of the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth is about a woman named Ruth, as you can guess, and she is a Moabitess, which is a different ethnicity, or she's not from the people of Israel. She descended from another line of people, and which the Moabites, they were idolaters, which was everybody. Everybody was idolaters. Everybody worshipped their own gods. If you were not of Israel and you didn't worship the God of Israel, you worshipped false gods, and so she was of the idol worshippers and the false gods that were out there. But she is a Moabitess. She goes and she's married to a man. He dies. She has a sister, and the husband of her sister dies as well. And the mom of the two men, I think her name was Naomi, and so Naomi is going to go back to the land of Israel because she'd left due to like a famine or something. And Ruth and her sister are at this crossroads, this fork in the road where they got to decide what they're going to do. Ruth clings to the mom and says, I will go back and I will be with you and your people. Your people will be my people and your God will be my God. But the other daughter, the sister of Ruth, does not, and she just goes back and goes to live her life, which was a big thing, because in the ancient world, women being taken care of by men was almost the only way they could survive. You had to go under the shelter of a man to be able to provide and take care of you. It's not like it is today. That's not at all like it is today. And but back then, her going to it was a way of like a humbling way that she says, I don't care that I don't have a future husband that is going to take care of me. I don't have someone there. You're not going to have another son that I could have another husband. But I'm going to still come and like cling to you, and your people are going to be my people, and your God's my God. So that is how Ruth steps into the land of Israel, which is a really cool thing. What happens? She goes back with Naomi. They go to Israel, and she by just a lot of coincidences happen, and she finds herself working in a field, and the man of that field is named Boaz. Now Boaz, he is awesome. I just, this book, whenever I always read it, it just made me feel good, because it was just one of the verses I want to read is if I could find it. I just love it because it's awesome. And because I'm doing this, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna read it. I love it. Love it. So Ruth finds herself working in this field, and this man Boaz comes out, and he's a wealthy man. He has a field. He has servants. He has everything that the people are working for him and everything like that. And he comes out there and he says like the coolest thing. Let's see if I can find it. And it's probably so silly for someone to hear about, but all right. So Boaz I'm just going to read from chapter 2 verse 3. All right, this is talking about Ruth. Then she went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered him, "The Lord bless you." I don't care. It seems like it's such a simple phrase and such a simple thing. Like, why does that even matter at all? To me, it always mattered a lot, because it's just like, it just always made me feel so good when that was their life. He just to live in that time would have been just awesome. Like, everything was all about God. Your whole national identity was built on God. You're the people, the chosen people. You worship the true and living God. And it wasn't a time where the knowledge of God was so prevalent like it is now. That we have Bibles everywhere, and like everyone has an opportunity to know about God and who He is. But back then, it was kind of like just to a very small group of people. But it's like it was before like the explosion happened where Jesus came, and then He said, "Go to all parts of the world, tell them the good news and make disciples of me so that it's like the nations can be brought in. You know, that had not happened yet. But it was just a simple phrase that him coming out to his own field with his servants, his workers, and just saying, just like you think of a boss. If you're a boss or you have a boss like that loves the Lord, you know, and that just like that works as like almost like as this has that servant type leadership where they, you know, I mean, you have a boss that treats you well, that takes care of you, and is always looking out for you. I mean, that's a very special thing. I mean, a lot of people maybe don't experience that, so you just have to kind of live your life as you have to be the example to them. You still have to do what you need to do. But to have a boss that comes out and just treats you as, you know, you're a brother in Christ or anything like that. That was almost that experience then. You know, they wouldn't have said brother in Christ, but they were brothers, you know, of the true and living God, you know. So him coming out and just saying, you know, bless you and the Lord, and then they say back, the Lord bless you. It was just such a simple time. They didn't have all these devices that we have. I don't think the world was as complex as it has gotten back then. I mean, I would pretty confidently say that is the case. It was just I think another thing is just being content. Always the book of Ruth reminds me of contentment because they had such a little, didn't have many things, but all you needed was food to sustain you, and you know, a roof or clothing to keep you warm and take care of you, you know, and like that. It was just everything was everything gets so complex now. Everything is so complex, and we have so many distractions. It's so hard to be content because we have to be stimulated. I'm talking about us. We have to be stimulated every second. We are constantly just overstimulated that we are numb to anything outside of us, you know, that we are just we get bored easily. And I always tell my kids, do not tell me you're bored. Do not tell me you're bored. We should never be bored. As Christians, I would say we should never be bored. There's never anything because there's always something we could be doing, you know, obviously for God's kingdom, we could be doing something, but also, and I know I probably sound corny when I talk about this because a lot of things I have in my head, and when I voice them, you know, I'm sure they sound really corny, but I'm going to voice it anyways. We should never be bored because God is with us. It's like you're like living in God's presence, and you're saying, I'm bored. Why would you even think that? Because I don't have a phone in front of me? Because I don't have a TV in front of me? Because I'm not playing PlayStation or Xbox? Why would you ever say you are bored when you have the true and living God who is right with you right now? I mean, you can be praying to him. You can be talking to him. You can be telling him about your day. You could be asking him for guidance. What should I be doing right now? What can I do that would bring you glory? If we just changed our mindset so that we started thinking like that, I think it would be very beneficial for us and for others, you know, and it would just draw us to God, make us closer to God. It would make us more aware of his presence, and I think we would grow in our relationship with him. And a lot of times it's just when we grow in our relationship with him, that's when we can grow in our relationship with others in a good way. We can be more of an example of Christ to whoever we're with. I want to be the type of person that is like Moses, that whenever I approach someone, whenever I encounter someone, it is like that I have stepped down from the mountain, out of the cloud, out from the presence of God, and I'm walking and I'm ready to meet someone and interact with them so that they see the glow of God on my face. I want to have that, you know, and it's tough to have that. It is tough to have that. It is extremely tough to have that because life just kicks you in the face, kicks you in the teeth. You just can't, life is tough. If you have not experienced the toughness of life, you haven't lived long enough, and you're going to experience it. And I think pretty much we all do. I think of, and this is all out. This is way out of left field, but I'm just going to just pull it out. I used to think of different people. You look at different people as celebrities, and you just think, wow, they have the perfect life. And maybe some of them do. Maybe some of them have the perfect life. Who knows? But I remember I used to think of Will Smith. He was a person, and I know but this was years ago, and I was like, his life, he couldn't be any better. I was thinking Will Smith, and then even before that, there was Tiger Woods, and just but then eventually things in this life, you things come out, and the world sees what they're going through. Even Tom Brady, the world sees things come out. We're all people, and everything. No matter what we get, how good things can get, how good things can be, no matter what we can achieve or whatever, we're all going to be just kind of what am I trying to say? And I know what I'm trying to say. It's I know what I'm trying to say, but I can't think of the word. It's we're eventually going to, I have notifications just popping up, and it's just distractions. That's what I'm talking about. Those are distractions. We got notifications just all the time bombarding us. We have notifications. Nothing has ever just settled down and relaxed. Everything is always going 110 miles per hour. And I'm sure there are so many people out there that experience this day in, day out. I mean, most people in the real world, you go to work, and it's you have to make a decision every second. You have to make a decision every second, and there's you can't just sit back and reflect on much, and you can't there's not much time to spend with God, because there is, but we're so bombarded with busyness that it's hard to bring God in to that craziness of our life. You know what I mean? I remember seeing a thing. It was one of those, I don't know if it's an acronym, but it was the word busy, and it stood for being under Satan's yoke. Now, just take a second to think about that. I'm going to say that again. The word busy is being under Satan's yoke. Just think about that. A lot of times I think Satan he puts busyness over us so that he can easier, is that even a word? Control us easier. So that he can sway us easier, so that we can not be doing the things that would be bringing glory to God. That would, and I am so guilty of this. Most of my life, I'm just thinking, I have the desire to do what is good. I have the desire. How many of you out there get that desire that you want to? Oh, you get an idea that you want to do something. You want to take care of someone. You want to do something that helps someone. But it actually never happens. I have that so many times. It's things just fizzle out. You get the desire, and you have where you want to go out and do something for someone, or you want to make a difference in someone's life, but it just never grows into actually action. It just stays as a desire, and then it eventually just dwindles away. Yeah. So, well, I wanted to just talk about that. That was the book of Ruth, and I wanted to skip to the end of the book of Ruth, and the reason I'm even bringing that book up is because of God's promise in Genesis that he was the seed of the woman, which is Jesus Christ. I will say that loud, and I will say that with conviction. Jesus Christ is that seed of the woman. He is that promised seed. And so the seed of the woman, which is Jesus Christ, from that very beginning of the book of the Bible, you think about that. That was written almost 2,000 years before Christ. So that's almost 3,000 years since right now. You know what I mean? God said that to that's Moses writing the book of Genesis. And that was even much longer that was actually happening, which was with Adam and Eve, our first parents. So God told them, he said, he's making a promise that he was going to fulfill. And then that's what the book of Genesis kind of goes down the line. And that's why there's so many genealogies in the Bible. And a lot of it is just, it's pointing from each person, that line of the descendants, or however that works, that line of from Adam to, and then it goes to not Abel, it goes to later on, I think, through Seth. It goes through, all just a line of people. You go to the very first chapter of Matthew, you can see that whole line of people. But within that line of people, Ruth gets pulled into that line, I would call this the royal line of Jesus Christ, his bloodline. And this is who, has anyone ever got on Ancestry or any type of kind of app to kind of find out your family history? Well, that a lot of the Bible is the family history of Jesus Christ. It's from, and it's our family history for the most part. If you're not Jewish, if you're not of the people of Israel, you're still a part of that, because we all descended from Adam and we all descended from Noah. So then Noah had his 3 sons, and then so everyone you look at on this planet has all descended from those people. So, but it becomes God wanted to make it very clear who the promised Messiah is, and he made it clear by saying by the line of succession going through from Adam all the way to, and then we get to this man named Abraham, and that's I kind of actually skipped over that part. I wanted to kind of talk about Abraham a little bit, but we're too far into this, so we're not going to go back. But he makes that promise to Abraham, and then from Abraham and his sons, or his son Isaac, and then to Israel, or to Jacob, and then Jacob, which becomes Israel. He has his children, and then from that, from his 12 sons, one of them is the one that is selected, who will be who the royal line will go through, and that's the son Judah. And there's a whole reason why it was Judah, why it was chosen as Judah. And and then from Judah it goes to a bunch of other people, but it stays within this same bloodline, going down through where it becomes very specific that it is that God wanted to make it clear who the Messiah was. He's not just going to be some random guy that comes out of nowhere and says, "Hey, I'm the Messiah," or whatever. I'm the Son of God, or anything like that. That could be something like later on with the Antichrist. Just some guy that comes out. If that is going to be a future thing, which I tend to, I lean towards that will be a future unfolding, and we could maybe step into that a little bit when we get to the book of Revelation. But to stay on the topic of Jesus's line of succession, it goes from Israel's son to Judah, and then from Judah descends. It goes to King David. And I'm sure most people listening to this have heard of this, but there might be some that haven't. But there's a very specific line of succession, a royal line, that the Messiah was going to come from. All right. I don't know why I started flipping pages. All right. But I wanted to read the very end of Ruth. And this is, so Ruth, who was a foreigner, she was not of the people of Israel, but she gets grafted in to be a part of the messianic line. That means Jesus's great grandmother was Ruth. She was in that line, which is pretty neat. So this is the very end of the book of Ruth. It's a beautiful love story in the book of Ruth. Boaz takes Ruth under his wing. He marries her and he takes care of her. And then it's an awesome love story. And it's a representation of, you would say, Boaz, he was a type of Christ. That is a way of saying he functioned in that capacity as an example of a type of Christ beforehand. Jesus is the fulfillment of that perfect he is the fulfillment of that. But within the Old Testament, there are many people who functioned as a type of Christ, and you could go through so many different people. David, Joseph, out of Jacob's 12 sons, he functioned as a type of Christ. There's many people who did that. Like they were like kind of like almost like a glimmer or a glimpse of Jesus in the Old Testament. Moses was a type of Christ. There's many people who functioned that way. It's like they were almost like they were kind of foreshadowing who Jesus would be, but Jesus is the fulfillment of all those things. So, all right, the very end of the book of Ruth, Ruth has a son, and then it continues the genealogy, and that's it's the author's main point of the book of Ruth, is to show to let kind of what am I trying to say? It's pointing towards David, King David, and that's the kind of the main point of the book of Ruth. It gives this beautiful love story of what happened, but it's ultimately just pointing to the messianic line, and it talks about how she begot so and so, and who begot so and so, who begot David. And I'll read this through so it kind of makes a little more sense. The very last words of the book of Ruth. Now this is the genealogy of Perez. Ooh. All right, now we're backtracking a little bit. When they're saying Perez, they're going back in time a little bit, which is would have been like from before Ruth and Boaz. I'm just going to read it. Now this is the genealogy of Perez. Perez begot Hezron. Hezron begot Ram, and Ram begot Amminadab. Amminadab begot Nahshon, and Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz, which was Ruth's husband. And Boaz begot Obed. Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David. So that makes King David his, dad, grandparent, great-grandparent, great-great-grandparent. So that makes David's great-great-grandmother would have been Ruth, according to this. So that's pretty cool. So all of that is to say, like, why are there so many genealogies? And I hope your eyes didn't glaze over on that little short snippet I gave of the genealogy of King David. But a lot of people, I like the genealogies. You don't want to get absorbed in them or anything like that, but they're pretty cool. And I think a lot of people right now, we care about our genealogies. I've got on Ancestry. I've tried to follow my family tree and try to, where did I come from? I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this, you kind of think about like, what was like my great grandparents back in the 1800s or the 1700s, or as many records as we can find. It's pretty interesting, just to think about. So now we're going to skip a little ahead. We're going to hit Isaiah, the book of Isaiah. I mean, you think I'm like, why are you bouncing all over the place? What are you doing? There is a method to my madness. There is a method, but mostly it's just madness. All right. I said I wanted to camp in the book of Revelation. Let's try to get through right here, and then we'll kind of sit down in the book of Revelation a little bit, because there's a lot there that we could talk about. There's a lot there in any verse of the Bible. There's a lot there we could talk about. Sorry. Okay. You're like, what is he doing? I'm hearing movement in my house, so you just kind of sometimes don't know what's going on. All right. And I might actually read the whole chapter of Isaiah. I might do it. And I hope Isaiah chapter 53, this, if you have not heard it, it's kind of like almost like the climax of, I take it as almost the climax of the book of Isaiah. And it's where in chapters 40 going 40 on, it talks about this servant of God who's going to accomplish what God has purposed, what he's going to do, his kind of his characteristics, how he's going to be, and all that. And then chapter 53 is where we get to what is known as the suffering servant. So in chapter 53, I'm going to actually start a little bit before that, and I'm going to read this through. This is chapter 52. Now, be aware that this book, Isaiah would have lived probably about 700 to 800 years before Jesus. Think about that. I mean, we just sometimes just gloss over a lot of the Bible, and it's so easy to just not even think about. It's so easy to not think about how this was all put together, and how it's all so perfectly perfectly aligns. Nothing goes against one thing or the other, and how something 800 years prophesied exactly what happened when Jesus was on earth. And so chapter 53 is the sin-bearing servant, this servant of God who comes, and he's going to take upon himself and be punished for the sins of his people. All right. Chapter 52, at the very end of it, says, "Behold, my servant shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted and extolled and be very high, just as many were astonished at you. So his visage was marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths at him. For what had not been told them they shall see, and what they had not heard they shall consider." All right, now we get into chapter 53. Now, the books of the Bible were not written in chapters. They were not written in verse. They were long accounts written on, more than likely, just one scroll of papyrus. But we have, since then, broken it up into chapters and verses so that we can quickly find verses in the Bible. So in chapter 53, which would have just been one continued telling of what is taking place, this is looking forward to the prophet Isaiah is looking forward to. He's seeing something that's going to happen in the future, but this account, this portrayal of what happens is almost like his people, which is the people of Israel, his people looking backwards and seeing this suffering servant, and then them becoming and them understanding what he has done for them. So it's God's people looking back and understanding, because it speaks almost in a past tense. That's why it's kind of weird, because it's Isaiah looking forward because he sees this Messiah accomplishing this, but he's almost seeing forward to even past Christ and the people of Israel looking back and understanding what their Messiah did, and them finally understanding what he accomplished. So I hope that makes sense. "Who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed?" Speaking about Jesus, "For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him." You always think Jesus would have been a beautiful man. You know, I mean, according to the Bible, there was nothing that would have attracted us to Jesus. I mean, you think about that. Really think about that. Like that, when Jesus was living and handling his ministry, he was not something that people would just been like struck in awe by his presence. But it was what he did and the things he said that made him like that. People felt like they knew that he was something extremely special. but just his sight, the sight of him and everything like that, nothing would have just drawn amazement from anybody seeing him, which is kind of weird because we always think Jesus would have him been this perfectly beautiful looking man, but according to the Bible, it's not so much, All right. It says, he is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment. And who will declare his generation? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. And they made his grave with the wicked, but with the rich at his death, because he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. This one's a tough one. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. Can you just think about that? I hope I'm not speaking too loud. Just think about that. It pleased the Lord to bruise him. When Jesus was on that cross, he was paying for your personal sins, for my personal sins. Our sins demand punishment. Our sins demand judgment. And for God to just pass over them would make him unjust. So he did not do that. And the way he does not do that is that he takes our personal sins, what we have done, and he put them all on Jesus Christ. When he was on that cross, it pleased the Lord because he was executing righteous judgment on his own son. That's tough. That's tough to handle. You know what I mean? He was executing righteous judgment, which we rightly deserved, but he was taking it for us. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He has put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. It's an awesome passage. It's an awesome passage. And it is preached by Philip, the evangelist, in the book of Acts. And I believe it's chapter 8. He stumbles upon this, what is it? Is it something, a eunuch from somewhere, and he preaches to him Jesus, and he preaches to him Jesus from that specific passage of Isaiah. It was just coincidence, total coincidence that he ran into him when this random guy was just reading from a scroll. And it's like, we think, oh, anybody could have a Bible back then. Well, they didn't have Bibles back then. They didn't have books like we do. Scrolls would have been extremely expensive. That's why, like, the person that Philip the evangelist, when he ran into, he would have probably been a very, very wealthy person. He was a eunuch for a queen or a king or something like that. But just by coincidence, stumbles upon him reading. Just think, like, he was scrolling on his phone and he was reading the Bible app. You know what I mean? No, probably would have been a very, like, in our days, like, how much money costs, like, for us now, like, that would probably have been a whole lot. Probably find out how much a scroll back then would have cost, but it would have been very expensive. Very expensive. All right, we are going to fast forward a little bit. Fast forward. Now, do I dare touch upon again my surprise at the end? I might just do it now. Just because I don't want to build it up. And I tend to build things up. You ask my wife, and she would say that I build things up all the time. Like, if I have anything for our kids, I have a surprise for them. They would say, like, I just like, if I have something, a surprise, I want to make it fun, and it's fun for me to build it up, even though it's a lot of times that's kind of over promising and under delivering, you know. So, but it's tough. It's tough not to do that. All right, the surprise is cream. Does anyone else out there have cream? And you're like, wow, that is a whole lot of cream. If you're actually watching this, you're seeing that I have a lot of cream. And I'm going to pour it into my coffee. Yum, yum, yum. Yum, yum, yum. All right. That just sweetens the ending, you know? Gives a nice sweet ending. What coffee y'all drinking? Huh? What's your all's coffee? Coffee du jour? All right. We're going to skip to the book of Revelation. Now, I'm going to probably just take a quick, just a couple quick verses from here that we're going to look at. And we're not going to dive in too deep. The book of Revelation I'm just going to talk about some different things about it. But the book of Revelation, if you haven't read it, I would imagine most people, I don't know. You would think that a lot of people would, but it's before I actually started reading the Bible. It was tough to actually read through a whole book or anything like that. So I don't know. Maybe for some people, they haven't read it, but if you haven't, you really need to, because it talks about how this is all going to wrap up, how this world's going to be made right again. There is going to be judgment at the end. There's going to be bad things that are going to happen, which bad things have happened throughout human history. And even since Jesus Christ, I would say this, the book of Revelation is in the Gospels. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they all give what is called the Olivet Discourse of Jesus, which is when they're walking out of the temple before Jesus dies. When they're walking out of the temple and they ask, they're like, the disciples are mesmerized by the temple. I mean, like, if you've ever been in front of a huge structure that mankind has built, I mean, I just think about like arenas that we build today. I mean, if you just think about like any arena that you go to or anything like that, or it's just massive things. It's like, how do people build these things? I don't understand it. I don't know. I don't get it. Like, a lot of things, I mean, there's just so many, like, how did we get to this point where we can put these things together and we can, I wouldn't know how to make this microphone, you know what I mean? I wouldn't know how to make this shirt. How I don't know how, like, the things that we have, is like, is anyone else out there like this, that you're just like, I don't know. It's just the things that we have, you know, and I just know it's just over years and decades and centuries that we've got to this point where just people make things and then they sell things and then they work together and make more stuff. And I show my ignorance. I demonstrate my ignorance for you all and for your all's pleasure. So I hope that's not shaking over there, because I keep bumping into the desk and the camera. Hope it's not moving. But I told you, this is the sausage being made sometimes, you know. And I know people don't like to see the sausage being made. They just like to see the end sausage. You know, it's not always pretty. It's not always pretty when you watch the sausage being made. But That's why there is editing. There's editing tools. The editing tools to clean things up, to make them really nice and neat and pretty. So, which I tend to not use. And you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday. I'm trying to get better at that. But where was I going with that? So with massive structures that people build, Jesus and his disciples are walking out of the temple, and they would have been walking out of Herod's temple that would have taken, I don't know how long it says, it took like 70 years to build it up to that time or something like that. I think it's something like that. That long to build this huge structure, and they're just mesmerized by it. In which this is the second temple. This is the second temple that they're walking out of. And I would be mesmerized too. I would as well. And they're just saying to Jesus, look at all these awesome things. And then Jesus tells them, you're amazed by these things. He says, and he tells them, I tell you, not one of these things, like this temple is going to be destroyed. That's the easy way to put it. This temple is going to be destroyed. Not one stone is going to be left upon another. And him doing that was, him saying that, just caught them off guard, and they're like, made them lean in and just say, what's happening? When are these going to be fulfilled? And then they pose the question, what's going to be the sign of your coming? And now I'm probably going to spend I'm going to probably save to talk about specifically these things of going into the Olivet Discourse and everything that Jesus discloses in that. And I think it's in maybe Mark 13. It's in all three of the synoptic gospels. Mark 13, I believe, Matthew 24, and Luke 21. So they all give Jesus' account of the Olivet Discourse, when that's kind of their... Jesus takes, James, John, and then Peter and Andrew, the four disciples, the four closest, and he takes them aside and he describes to them what's going to happen so that they're not caught off guard when all these things start taking place. Now, the debate is whether that all continued after the apostles, and the unfolding of what Jesus said is still yet future. Like, that's in a lot of the Bible, it's cyclical. Things happen, one thing happens, and there's a greater fulfillment that happens later. And it's not to say, like, because Jesus points to certain things when he's talking about, he says, like, when you see the abomination of desolations in the holy place, he says this, and he says, spoken of by the prophet Daniel. He references back to the prophet Daniel, and he says, when you see the abomination of desolation, that would have been a very, very key indicator of what that would have triggered them to remember a time when Antiochus Epiphanes, which was almost 2 centuries before Jesus. This was the Maccabees, which was about 200 years or so before Jesus. The Maccabees were the ones that they fought back against this Greek general, or whoever this person that just desecrated the temple years before, where I believe he took a statue of Zeus. This is what I'm kind of remembering, and bits and pieces that I've taken thinking and talking about these things, and reading upon them. He put a statue of Zeus in the holy place. That he desecrated the temple by, I don't know if he sacrificed a pig or something like that. I don't know. There was but it was an abomination that happened back then, years before Jesus. But Jesus takes that example and he points to a future event that's going to even be a greater abomination of desolation, that this could be in the future, even possibly even beyond us, that is still yet to take place, which would be, if there is a future actual Antichrist that comes, that is spoken, the man of lawlessness and all that kind of stuff, that is the beast who is talking about in the Bible. But he pulls from that, which would have reminded them of what took place back in the Maccabean period, but he points towards a future event, and he's saying this to his disciples. And when he's speaking to his apostles, there's times he's speaking to them, but by implication and by reference, them passing it along, it's speaking to us as well, I would say. That's why I would fall. So the book of Revelation, why I was even bringing all that up was Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the synoptic gospels, they give their account of Jesus' Olivet Discourse. The book of John does not have an account of the book. He does not have an account of the Olivet Discourse. He does not give, like the synoptic gospels, an explanation or a reading of what Jesus told his disciples about future things like that. But I would say his Olivet Discourse, and you've probably heard other people say this, his Olivet Discourse is the book of Revelation. It's the account that he took, which John, in my understanding, it's the same John that wrote the book of John. When I say wrote, he more than likely had other people write it while he spoke it, or how. When we say a lot of times writing in the book of Bible, a lot of times it's not people physically writing. It would have been them giving an account and someone writing it for them. They would have had people that were professionals in that. That would have been a kind of a trade. Somebody that was their job. They wrote out things. You know what I mean? So. But John, in writing the book of Revelation, whether he physically wrote it or not, it's still, I think, from that same John that wrote the book of John, and also the three letters of John: 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John. Now, there has been debate whether it's a different writer or a different John that wrote certain ones, but I fall under the understanding that it's the same person who wrote this. So, when we get to the book of Revelation and the Apostle John giving his vision, now I'm going to do a very high level summarizing fashion of the book of Revelation. And a lot of people don't want to touch the book of Revelation. I keep saying revelation. A lot of people don't want to touch the book of Revelation. People like I think I've heard maybe Martin Luther and John Calvin, like I might be wrong on this, but when they wrote about, they almost did a commentary, a running commentary, almost every book of the Bible, but both of them, to my understanding, did not do one over the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is a very mysterious book. It's very allegorical. You could say it's allegorical. I mean, it could be allegorical. It's not taken literally in a lot of ways. But it's a very hard book, and what the purpose of the book is. So to make strong cases of what this means or that means, it's very, very tough. It's not easy at all. So the book of Revelation is, and I've bounced back and forth of the timing of the book of Revelation. When did John write this book? And I've went to, this happened before the temple was destroyed, and the temple was actually destroyed, physically destroyed, in 70 A.D. by General Titus of the Roman army. He destroyed the temple, and that is, every scholar agrees with that pretty much. That's not a debated issue at all. He destroyed the temple in 70 A.D. and a lot of what Jesus is telling his disciples of things to take place, it's pointing to that event that was going to happen within that generation. Now, what gets tough is in his description of unfolding events that are going to happen in the future, when he's telling his disciples, is he tells them the destruction of the temple is going to happen, and that did happen within that generation, because Jesus says all these things will be fulfilled within this generation. Which that would have been a huge prophecy. I got that thumbs up. There we go. That would have been a huge prophecy, a prediction, and it would have been a very clear way. People like the Old Testament, and I don't want to start chasing rabbits, and that's what I tend to do. In the Old Testament, it gives parameters for a prophet. If a prophet can be tested whether they are a true prophet of God based on certain criteria. If they meet this criteria, they can be a bona fide prophet. If they don't meet this criteria, they are not a true prophet. And one of them is, if a prophet makes a prediction and it comes to pass, they could be a true prophet of God. So, but if a prophet makes a prediction and it doesn't come to pass, that is an indicator that they are not a true prophet. That's where it gets kind of dicey. But a person can make a prediction and I would say, let's stay in the context of a prophet. A prophet could still make a prediction and it be true, that prophecy come to fruition and happen, but they could still be a false prophet. This is where it gets kind of tough. If a prophet back in like the Old Testament would have made a prediction, it came to pass, but then they started trying to lead people away from following God, the true and living God, they would have been a false prophet, like sent just to kind of mislead the people and almost as a test, so that that the people of God would have been tested. They would have understood this is a false prophet, and their course of action would be to stone them. You would stone, or you would execute a false prophet. So Jesus making this prediction in the Olivet Discourse, he says all these things are going to happen within this generation. He says the temple is going to be destroyed. Not one stone is going to be left upon another. And I would say that one stone left upon another, I've heard, is when the Romans destroyed the temple, they burned the temple down. That what would have taken place would have been gold would have melted and went down into the rocks, and then the Romans and the soldiers and everything like that, as they were destroying everything, they would have been pulling every stone which in every way, trying to get that gold that had melted down into the rocks. So that happens. The Romans destroyed the temple, and then if you read through Matthew, Mark, and Luke, what they explain is Jesus says, it's almost like a descriptor of, it kind of fast forwards to the coming of his return, or it says like his coming. That's why I don't want to get into this too much, because I would want to spend more time to actually talk about that aspect of it, of Jesus's return, because it kind of can be a stumbling block to anyone who has not really thought these things through and really examined the scriptures and really looked into everything, because in some form or fashion, it can be used, these Olivet Discourse discussions, of a way to disprove that Jesus, to disprove his validity of being a true prophet, or who he claims to be, the Messiah. Because it looks like he makes a claim that does not come to pass. Because it looks like he makes a claim that he's going to return, his second coming. He's going to return within that same generation. And that obviously did not happen, because we are still here 2,000 years later. So if you have not had time to actually look into that, that can be a thing that kind of can cause you to question that. But I would use that to spend more time later to have to kind of talk through more, because Jesus did not, though it's one of those things that it kind of seems like it's kind of tough to understand, but if you really look into it and look more of it, you can kind of understand that he is not making any false claims. That's where I would leave that at this point without diving in further. What I wanted to point out for the book of Revelation is just a couple of different things, because let's bring this back home to God does not know how to fail. God does not know how to fail. What happened in Genesis and his promise, and what came through the course of time and history, human history, of him sending his son through into the world, but coming specifically through this messianic royal bloodline, which went through Ruth, and which ultimately went through Mary as she gave birth to Jesus. This royal bloodline comes to fulfillment with Jesus coming into the world. And so God's promise that he would come into the world and faithfully redeem his people is executed when he comes and he's born of Mary, and then he lives that perfect life that we could not live, and that he goes to the cross and pays for our sins. and that he crushes the head of the serpent on the cross. When he was on that cross, when he was paying for our sins, he was in effect crushing the head of the serpent. So Revelation is a future narrative of what's going to happen within this world, I would say. I lean towards that. I mean, I don't know what's your all's thoughts. Do you take this as just I mean, there's so many different views and of how to classify Revelation. Well, it falls under there's all these different approaches of how to understand the book of Revelation, whether it's purely allegorical, whether it's each part of the book has a specific part of human history that it's talking about. Like if in the first 3 chapters of the book of Revelation, it talks about Jesus has these letters that are sent to 7 churches within, I believe, Asia Minor. And some people have taken each letter of those 7 churches is a specific part of human history. And we're at this point. We're at this letter in human history. So, but then it's a tough book to go through. But where there's mystery and where things are kind of hard to interpret, there's still so much there, and there's still so much we can learn. Every time you read through it, you're going to come away with a more sometimes a more clear understanding. Sometimes you might come more confusion, but I would say overall the basic theme of the book is the faithfulness of God. God is telling his people at the beginning of the book, you're going to go through this trial, but if you can make it through this trial, you will be reunited with God in paradise forever, and that's the whole point of the book. And really, it's God is going to carry you through. For those people that have joined themselves with God, that have, that's why the whole Bible is about, there's the whole world, and then within this world, God redeems a group of people. But even within that group of people, there's people that are in there that are not truly of the redeemed people of God. They're just, that's what's called the wheat and the tares. There's people that are truly of God's people, but then there's also people that are just putting on a show, that are just not really, that don't truly love God. There's and that's why I ultimately believe God will redeem all of his people that Christ died for. And that's a tough one, but that's where something we can rest in, where we can think, because we think about, did Jesus die for my sins or didn't he? Well, I mean, I would say just if you are even concerned about that, if you would even take that and think, man, did Christ really die for my sins? Did he pay for my sins? A person that's not of God, that's not going to be reunited with him, and that's not of his people, they're not going to be concerned with that. So if you are concerned with that, that means that I would say that God is that he has died for you. So his son did die for you. So that's something you could rest in. So don't because I've always, you question your salvation, you kind of go back and forth. It's tough, but you're going to go through tough times and things that are going to test your faith and make you doubt and everything like that. But if you're even concerned about that, we're never going to have a perfect love of God. We're never going to be perfectly righteous in this life. But the distinction is the perseverance of God's people. And if you want to love God, if you care about that at all, then you are in good company, I would say. And that's something, a lot of times, the thing that makes you even closer to God, and the thing that is going to make you more strong in your faith and more at peace with that you will be with him forever, is going to be that the life you live and the things that you go through they're going to bring you out stronger and stronger, and you're going to grow closer and closer to Him. Those things are going to just test your faith and make you stronger. It's the what I'm trying to say is it's like you're going to have like days. You can't measure your salvation in days and in hours and all that kind of stuff. And man, I blew up at my wife, or I yelled at my children, or I did something bad. I told a lie. I did something I shouldn't have. I went to a website I shouldn't have. There's so many things. There's a million things that we could do that we fall short, and we can't just judge ourselves on that short little snippet of a failure that we make. God is going to bring us through those things. It's the overall picture that we go through. It's the overall, like I would say, look at the don't look at a snapshot of your life. Look at the greater picture of it. And as you're a Christian longer and longer, you're going to have a bigger picture to look at. And you're going to see how much He's caused you to grow through it all. You're going to get stronger and stronger. And I might be preaching to the choir, but if I'm not, if you're somebody that's new to this, you got to start the journey first of all, and that's just by giving yourself to the Lord, and then God's going to bring you through tests. He's going to make you go through tests, and you're going to grow and grow in your faith. So I would just say, just closing up with the book of Revelation, which I know we haven't really dived in much of it, and I think almost that's like something that's probably a good thing. I probably need to actually go into different parts of it, but would be better if I had if we specifically focused in on it and went through verse by verse certain things and try to pull certain things out. So we're not going to go too deep into it at all. But I just wanted to kind of give an overall picture of that wherever you're at, whatever you're going through, God doesn't know how to fail. I'll just bring it back to that. God doesn't know how to fail. And though we fail every day, God does not know how to fail. He will, whatever He's bringing you through right now, whatever you're specifically going through, if you look to Him, He's going to bring you out through the other side. You're going to go through a lot of stuff. We go through a lot of things that are not fun, and it's extremely tough, and this life is hard, and anyone who's lived long enough understands that. So whatever you're going through, look to Christ, and He will lead you through it. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. We're going to stop right there, and God bless. Peace. All right. Hope everyone has a wonderful day.